The emergency signal cut through space like a scream in the dark. It traveled faster than light, bouncing off relay stations, piercing through the void between stars. The message was simple and desperate. "Help us, please. We are dying." Ambassador Ceres stood in the council chamber of the Valthene Coalition and watched the holographic display with 3 of her hearts sinking. Another colony had gone silent. That made 12 in the last month. The Kralik swarm was moving faster than anyone had predicted. "How many civilians were on Station Verath?" asked Council Member Pranir. His blue skin had gone pale. 40,000 souls, Ceres answered quietly. Families, children, scientists who never held a weapon in their lives. The council chamber fell silent. Through the tall windows, Ceres could see the capital city of Valth Prime stretching toward the horizon. Peaceful, beautiful, doomed if they did nothing. The Kraliks had appeared at their borders 6 months ago with a simple message: submit or die. The Valthene Coalition had tried diplomacy. They sent ambassadors with gifts and offers of trade. The Kraliks sent back pieces of the ambassadors in cargo containers. They tried establishing neutral zones and peace talks. The Kraliks used the ceasefires to reposition their fleets and attack from new angles. The Valthene were not warriors. Their civilization had abandoned warfare 3,000 years ago, after a devastating civil war nearly destroyed their homeworld. Since then, they had built a society based on art, science, and philosophy. They had welcomed 6 other species into their coalition, all of them sharing the same peaceful values. Together, they had created something beautiful. The Kraliks were destroying it piece by piece. "We must surrender," said Councillor Vesh. "We can negotiate terms. Surely they will allow some degree of autonomy." "They won't," Ceres said firmly. She had studied the Kraliks extensively over the past months. "They don't negotiate. They conquer. They'll strip our worlds of resources, enslave our people, and move on to the next target." "Then what do you suggest?" Pren demanded. "We have no military. Our defense fleet consists of patrol ships designed to chase smugglers, not fight a war." Ceres took a deep breath. "We send the distress call to every known civilization in the galaxy. Someone must be willing to help." The council debated for hours. Some argued that asking for outside help would compromise their sovereignty. Others insisted that pride meant nothing if they were all dead. Finally, as the twin suns of Valth Prime set beyond the horizon, they voted. The motion passed. Ceres worked through the night crafting the message. It had to be perfect. She described the Kraliks' aggression in detail. She explained the humanitarian crisis, the refugee camps overflowing with displaced civilians, the children orphaned by the attacks. She emphasized the need for mediation, peacekeeping forces, and diplomatic intervention. The message went out to 47 different civilizations across known space. Most didn't respond. A few sent messages of sympathy but claimed they couldn't spare resources. 3 species sent medical supplies which helped but wouldn't stop plasma cannons. Then Earth responded. Ceres didn't know much about humans. They were a relatively young species that had only achieved faster than light travel 200 years ago. Their planet was small and unremarkable, located in a quiet arm of the galaxy, but they had expanded rapidly, establishing colonies and trade routes with impressive efficiency. She pulled up the human files in the Coalition database. The information was limited. Earth had experienced something called world wars in their past. They had nearly destroyed themselves with nuclear weapons at one point. Since reaching the stars, they had been involved in several peacekeeping operations and conflict resolutions with various aggressive species. That last part gave Ceres hope. Humans knew how to handle aggressors. They could mediate. They could establish peace. The human response came within 24 hours. It was brief. Received your distress call. United Earth Fleet dispatching task force to your location. ETA 14 days. Hold position. Help is coming. The council chamber erupted in relief when Ceres shared the news. Finally, someone was coming. Someone who understood conflicts and knew how to resolve them. The humans would surely bring negotiators, mediators, perhaps a defensive fleet to protect them while peace talks commenced. "How many ships are they sending?" asked Councillor Vesh. Ceres checked the transmission data. 47 vessels according to their fleet manifest. 47. "That's more than our entire defense force," Prin said excitedly. "Surely the Kraliks will agree to negotiate when they see such a show of force." Ceres nodded, though something nagged at the back of her mind. The human message had been strangely cold. No sympathetic words. No promises of diplomatic solutions. Just a statement of fact. We are coming. Over the next 2 weeks, the Kralix tightened their grip. 3 more colonies fell. Refugee ships fled toward Valth Prime, overloading the planet's infrastructure. The defense fleet managed to evacuate most civilians before the Kralix arrived, but they lost 2 ships in the process. Good vessels crewed by good people who wanted nothing more than to protect innocents. Cirrus barely slept. She coordinated relief efforts, managed supply distribution, and tried to keep hope alive among the coalition species. She also studied everything she could find about humans. The more she read, the more uneasy she became. Human history was soaked in blood. They had fought wars for thousands of years. Religion, resources, territory, ideology, it didn't seem to matter. They found reasons to kill each other with disturbing regularity. Even after achieving space travel, they had engaged in several military actions against hostile species. But they had also negotiated peace treaties. They had established the United Earth government after centuries of conflict. They had moved beyond their violent past, or so it seemed. Surely they would bring that experience to the Valthian situation. On the morning of the 14th day, Sarah stood in the observation center watching the long-range sensors. The Kralix were assembling a massive fleet at the edge of the system. Intelligence suggested they were preparing for a final assault on Valth Prime itself. After this, the coalition would cease to exist. Then the sensors lit up with new contacts. 47 human ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the outer system boundary. Cirrus felt relief flood through her. They had arrived. The humans were here. But as the sensor data refined and the ship classifications came through, her relief turned to confusion. These weren't medical vessels or diplomatic transports. Every single ship was a warship. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers, and 3 massive battleships that bristled with weapons. Why would they bring a war fleet to a peacekeeping mission? Pren whispered beside her. Sarris didn't have an answer. She watched as the human fleet moved into formation with military precision. They didn't slow down. They didn't hail the coalition asking for diplomatic briefings. They simply advanced toward Valth Prime at combat speed. A transmission came through on the priority channel. A human face appeared on the screen. He was older, with gray hair and hard eyes that had seen too much. His uniform was crisp and decorated with symbols that Sarris assumed were military honors. This is Admiral Marcus Chen of the United Earth Fleet. We received your distress call. We're here to help. Transmit current tactical data on hostile forces, not enemy positions for negotiation. Hostile forces, tactical data, the language of war, not peace. Sarris felt her 3 hearts beating faster. She had asked for help. The humans had answered, but looking at that fleet, at those weapons, at that admiral's cold expression, she suddenly wondered what kind of help was actually coming. Thank you, Admiral, she managed to say. We're transmitting all data now. When can we begin diplomatic outreach to the Kralix? Admiral Chen's expression didn't change. Ambassador, we tried contacting them on our way in. They told us to leave your system or be destroyed. And what did you respond? Sarris asked, though part of her already knew. The Admiral smiled, but there was no warmth in it. We told them we'll see them soon. The transmission ended. Sarris stared at the blank screen, then back at the sensor display showing the human fleet. 47 warships loaded with enough firepower to crack a planet. She had called for help. She had expected diplomats and mediators. Instead, humanity had sent its warriors. The human flagship was nothing like Sarris had imagined. She had visited coalition military vessels before, back when they still maintained a token defense force. Those ships had been clean and bright, with art displays in the corridors and meditation chambers for crew wellness. The ships felt more like flying universities than instruments of war. Admiral Chen's flagship, the Vengeful Spirit, was different. The shuttle bay where Sarris landed was purely functional. Gray metal walls, harsh lighting. The deck crew moved with practiced efficiency, wearing armor even inside the ship. Every person she saw carried a sidearm. Through an open maintenance hatch, she glimpsed what looked like missile racks. A young human woman met her at the shuttle ramp. She wore a dark uniform with lieutenant's insignia and had a professional smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Ambassador Sarris, welcome aboard. I'm Lieutenant Park. The Admiral is waiting for you in the command center. This way, please. Sarris followed her through corridors that hummed with barely contained energy. She passed crew members who nodded respectfully but never stopped working. Through doorways, she saw armories stocked with rifles and heavier weapons. One room was filled entirely with sealed containers marked with symbols she didn't recognize, but that made her skin crawl. "Are those what I think they are?" she asked, stopping to look. Lieutenant Park glanced at the containers. "Nuclear warheads, ma'am. We have about 300 aboard. Standard load for a battleship." 300, Saris repeated weakly. The Coalition had banned nuclear technology after their civil war. The very idea of having that many devastating weapons on a single ship was horrifying. "Don't worry, Ambassador. We know how to use them safely," Park said, as if that was somehow comforting. The command center was vast and filled with stations where crew members monitored everything from weapons systems to engine status. Holographic displays showed the positions of every ship in the system. The Kralix fleet at the edge, the human fleet between them and Valth Prime, the Coalition's pathetic handful of patrol ships hiding behind the human formation. Admiral Chen stood at the center of it all, studying the tactical display with 3 other senior officers. He looked up as Saris entered and dismissed the others with a gesture. "Ambassador Saris, thank you for coming aboard." His voice was rough, like gravel grinding together. "Admiral Chen, thank you for responding to our distress call." Saris tried to keep her voice steady. "We're desperate for your help in establishing a peaceful resolution to this conflict." Chen's expression didn't change. "Walk with me, Ambassador." He led her to a private observation room overlooking the planet below. Valth Prime turned slowly beneath them, beautiful and fragile. Chen poured 2 glasses of something amber from a bottle and offered her one. She declined. Humans drank alcohol recreationally, which seemed like poor judgment for a military commander, but she kept that thought to herself. "Let me be direct, Ambassador," Chen said, taking a sip of his drink. "What exactly were you expecting when you sent that distress call?" We expected help," Saris said carefully. "Diplomatic assistance, perhaps a protective fleet while we negotiated with the Kralix. Mediation from a neutral party." "You expected us to talk them into leaving you alone," Chen said flatly. "Yes. Isn't that how civilized species resolve disputes?" Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled up a file on his tablet and handed it to her. "This is the communication log from our first contact with the Kralix. We sent it 3 days ago as we entered your sector." Saris read the message. It was professional and diplomatic. The humans identified themselves, stated their intention to provide humanitarian assistance to the Valthine Coalition, and requested the Kralix withdraw from Coalition space to allow for peace negotiations. The Kralix response was brief. "Leave or die. There is nothing to negotiate. These worlds are ours now." The humans had sent a second message asking for at least a ceasefire to evacuate civilians. The Kralix hadn't bothered to respond to that one. "They won't negotiate," Chen said quietly. "We've seen species like this before. The only thing they understand is force." "But there must be a diplomatic solution," Saris insisted. "Every conflict can be resolved through dialogue if both parties have to want dialogue," Chen interrupted. "The Kralix don't. They want your worlds. They want your resources. They want your people as slaves or corpses. Which do you prefer?" The bluntness shocked her. You can't just assume violence is the only answer." Chen took another sip of his drink. "Tell me, Ambassador, before you sent out that distress call, how many times did you try talking to the Kralix?" "Dozens of times. We sent ambassadors, we offered trade agreements. We suggested neutral territory for peace talks. And they killed your ambassadors. Ignored your offers and used your ceasefires to reposition their forces," Chen finished. "How many of your people have died while you tried to talk?" Saris felt anger flash through her. "Over 200,000. But that doesn't mean we should abandon our principles. Violence only creates more violence." "You're right," Chen said, surprising her. "Violence does create more violence. That's why we need to make sure the Kralix understand that attacking the Valthine Coalition will result in so much violence directed at them that they never want to try it again." "That's barbaric," Saris whispered. "That's effective." Chen pulled up another display. "This is our battle plan. We're going to position the fleet here, here, and here. When the Kralix fleet advances, we'll hit them with long-range missiles first. That should reduce their numbers by 20% before they can return fire. Then we'll close to weapons range and engage directly." Saris stared at the plan in horror. The human formation was designed to maximize casualties. They weren't planning to defend. They were planning to attack. To kill. This is genocide, she said. You're talking about wiping out their fleet. I'm talking about stopping them from wiping out your civilization, Chen corrected. Every Kralix ship we destroy is a ship that can't bomb your colonies or enslave your people. Every Kralix soldier who dies here is one who won't kill your children. We didn't ask for this, Saris said desperately. We asked for help, not massacre. Chen's expression hardened. You asked for help. This is what help looks like when talking has failed. You called Earth because you knew we've dealt with aggressive species before. You read our history. You saw that we resolve conflicts. Did you not wonder how? I assumed, Saris struggled to find words. You've established peace treaties. You have the United Earth government. You've moved beyond your violent past. We established peace by making war so terrible that everyone agreed to stop, Chen said quietly. The United Earth government exists because every nation on our planet saw what nuclear weapons could do and decided that cooperation was better than extinction. We moved beyond our violent past by learning how to direct that violence at threats instead of each other. He turned back to the tactical display. In 6 hours, the Kralix fleet will be in range. They'll advance on Valth Prime and finish what they started, unless we stop them. By killing them all, Saris said numbly. By hurting them so badly that they never come back, Chen replied. Ambassador, I understand this isn't what you wanted. You wanted a peaceful solution. I wish I could give you that. But the Kralix made their choice when they rejected every attempt at diplomacy. When they killed your ambassadors. When they murdered 200,000 of your civilians, they chose this. And what gives you the right to choose death for them? Saris demanded. Chen looked at her with those hard, tired eyes. You did. When you sent that distress call. When you asked for help. You gave us the right to defend you using the methods we know work. You just didn't ask what those methods were. A warning tone sounded through the ship. Lieutenant Park's voice came over the intercom. Admiral, sensors detect the Kralix fleet beginning their advance. They're moving toward Valth Prime at attack speed. Chen moved to the window and looked out at the distant specks of light that were enemy ships. This is your last chance, Ambassador. You can ask us to stand down. We'll withdraw our fleet and leave you to negotiate with the Kralix on your own terms. Or you can let us do what we came here to do. Saris looked down at her homeworld. She thought of the 200,000 dead. The millions more who would die if the Kralix weren't stopped. She thought of children in refugee camps, families torn apart, entire colonies reduced to rubble and ash. She thought of her principles. The values that had defined Valthine civilization for 3,000 years. Peace, diplomacy, the sanctity of life. Then she thought of what would happen to all of that if the Kralix won. Do what you have to do, she whispered. Save my people. Admiral Chen nodded slowly. We will. But Ambassador, I want you to understand something. After today, you won't be able to pretend anymore. You'll know exactly what it takes to survive in a hostile galaxy. You'll know what we are, what we've always been. He pressed a button on his console. Throughout the ship, Saris heard klaxons begin to wail. The crew moved with controlled urgency to their battle stations. All hands, this is the Admiral. Chen's voice echoed through the ship. General quarters. Battle formation. Weapons free. Show them what happens when they threaten our friends. Saris watched the tactical display as the human fleet surged forward to meet the Kralix. She had asked for help. She was at the Battle of Valth Prime began with mathematics. Saris watched from the observation deck of the Vengeful Spirit as Admiral Chen calmly called out distances, velocities, and firing solutions. The command center had transformed from a busy workspace into something that looked like controlled chaos. But every person knew exactly what they were doing. Kralix fleet at 400,000 kilometers and closing, reported a sensor officer. Count is 137 vessels. Dreadnoughts, cruisers, and fighter carriers. They outnumber us almost 3-1, Lieutenant Park noted quietly beside Saris. Doesn't matter, Chen replied, his voice steady. Lieutenant Morrison, status on missile batteries? All tubes loaded and ready, sir. We have firing solutions on their lead elements. Fire when ready. The ship barely trembled as the first wave of missiles launched. Through the observation window, Saris saw dozens of small lights streak away from the human fleet. Hundreds of missiles, moving faster than anything the Valthine had ever built. The tactical display tracked them as they covered the distance to the Kralix fleet in seconds. The Kralix had point defense systems. Saris watched as they shot down many of the incoming missiles, but not all of them. Not nearly enough. Explosions blossomed in the darkness of space, silent, beautiful, deadly. When the light faded, 17 Kralix ships had been destroyed or crippled. 17 ships eliminated before the battle had truly begun. Second wave fire, Chen ordered. More missiles launched. The Kralix were ready this time, their point defense working overtime. They shot down more missiles, but again, not all. Another 12 ships took critical damage. The Kralix formation wavered but continued forward. "They're not running," Saris said, surprised. "They're committed," Chen replied. "They see us as just another obstacle. They'll learn." The Kralix fleet opened fire. Their plasma weapons lit up space with green and yellow energy. The beams crossed the distance between fleets in seconds. Saris gripped the railing as the first shot struck the human ships. The shielding absorbed most of it, but not all. One human destroyer took a direct hit that punched through its armor. Atmosphere vented into space. The ship listed but kept moving, kept fighting. "Damage report on the Resolute," Chen demanded. "Hull breach on decks 4 through 6. They're sealing it now. Weapons system still operational." Chen nodded as if this was expected, as if losing a portion of a ship and everyone on those decks was just part of the plan. Saris felt sick. "All ships close to engagement range. Fighter wings, you are cleared for launch." The human carriers opened their bays. Hundreds of small craft poured out, moving in formations that looked like schools of predatory fish. They streaked toward the Kralix fleet while the larger ships followed at attack speed. The Kralix launched their own fighters. The space between the two fleets became a chaotic mess of dogfights, explosions, and debris. Saris couldn't follow it all. The tactical display was too cluttered, too fast, too violent. What shocked her most was the human tactics. Valthene doctrine, back when they still had military doctrine focused on preservation. Protect your ships, minimize casualties, fight defensively and withdraw if losses became too heavy. Humans fought like they had nothing to lose and everything to prove. She watched a human destroyer, with critical damage, deliberately ram itself into a Kralix cruiser. Both ships exploded in a fusion reaction that lit up space like a newborn star. The human captain had sacrificed his entire crew to take out an enemy vessel. "Did that commander just commit suicide?" she asked, horrified. "Captain Rodriguez knew his ship was done," Lieutenant Park explained. "Life support was failing. Rather than let his crew die slowly, he took an enemy ship with him. They'll get full honors when we get home." "That's insane," Saris whispered. "That's duty," Park corrected gently. The main fleets collided. At this range, the weapons became even more brutal. Railguns fired slugs of metal at relativistic speeds. Missiles with nuclear warheads detonated in close proximity. Energy weapons carved through hulls like knives through flesh. The Kralix were good. Saris had to admit that. They were experienced warriors who had conquered dozens of species. They fought with skill and ferocity, but the humans fought like devils. A Kralix dreadnought disabled a human cruiser with a devastating broadside. Before the Kralix could finish it off, 2 human destroyers moved to protect their wounded comrade. They positioned themselves directly between the enemy dreadnought and the damaged cruiser. Taking fire meant for their fellow ship. Both destroyers were destroyed. The cruiser survived. "Why?" Saris asked. "Why sacrifice 2 ships to save one?" "Because those are our people," Chen replied without looking away from the display. "We don't leave anyone behind." Another Kralix ship, this one a carrier, tried to flank the human formation. Admiral Chen dispatched a single battleship to intercept it. Saris watched as the battleship, the Indomitable, charged directly at the carrier despite being outnumbered by the carrier's escorts. The Indomitable took horrific damage. Its shields failed. Its armor was breached in multiple places. Fires burned in its interior, but it kept moving forward, its weapons never stopping. When it reached the Kralix carrier, the Indomitable opened up with everything it had at point-blank range. The carrier's shields collapsed under the assault. Its hull split open. Secondary explosions rippled through its structure. The carrier tried to retreat, but the Indomitable followed like a predator chasing wounded prey. Even as the battleship lost atmosphere, even as systems failed, it kept firing. The carrier tried to escape into faster-than-light travel. The Indomitable's final action was to fire its remaining missiles directly into the carrier's jump engines. Both ships vanished in an explosion that registered on sensors across the entire star system. All Hands on the Indomitable are lost, a communications officer reported quietly. The command center fell, silent for exactly 3 seconds. Noted in the log, Chen said. They bought us the flank. Continue the attack, Sarah stared at him. You're not even going to acknowledge that over 1,000 people just died? I'll mourn them when the battle is over, Chen replied coldly. Right now I need to make sure they didn't die for nothing. The battle raged for 2 more hours. The space around Valth Prime became a graveyard of broken ships and frozen corpses. The Kralix fought hard, but the humans fought harder. Every time the Kralix adapted to human tactics, the humans changed their approach. Every time the Kralix tried to gain an advantage, the humans countered with something unexpected and usually violent. The Kralix tried to use their biological weapons, releasing clouds of engineered viruses meant to infiltrate human ships through ventilation systems. The humans sealed their ships and vented the atmosphere in affected sections. Then they returned fire with their own bioweapons, strains specifically designed to target Kralix physiology. You developed weapons specifically to kill them? Saris asked in horror. We developed countermeasures based on their biology, Park corrected. Once they used bioweapons, they gave us permission to respond in kind. That's not how war should work, Saris protested. War doesn't work according to anyone's rules except survival, Chen said. They chose to escalate. We're better at escalation than they are. The tide turned slowly but inevitably. The Kralix fleet, which had started at 137 ships, dwindled to less than 70, then 50, then 30. The human fleet, which began at 47 ships, was down to 31 operational vessels and another 8 damaged but still fighting. The casualties were terrible on both sides, but the Kralix were losing faster. Finally, the Kralix commander sent a transmission. It appeared on the main display, a reptilian face with multiple eyes and sharp teeth. The alien looked shocked, angry, afraid. We withdraw, the Kralix commander hissed. You have won this engagement. We will leave Coalition space. No, Admiral Chen replied simply. The Kralix commander's eyes widened. We are offering terms of withdrawal. This is customary among warrior species. You should have thought about that before you killed 200,000 Valthian civilians, Chen said coldly. Before you rejected every diplomatic offer. Before you told us to leave or die. We don't accept your withdrawal. We accept only your surrender. We do not surrender. We will regroup and return with greater force. No, you won't. Chen gestured to his weapons officer. Target their engines. All remaining ships. Disable them. Sir, they're trying to retreat, the weapons officer said, seeking confirmation. I know. Disable them anyway. The human fleet opened fire on the retreating Kralix vessels. They targeted propulsion systems specifically, leaving the ships crippled and drifting. The Kralix fired back desperately, but they were broken and scattered. Within an hour, every surviving Kralix ship was disabled and helpless. Saris watched the tactical display in stunned silence. The battle was over. The Kralix fleet was destroyed. Valth Prime was saved. But the cost was written in the debris field that now orbited her homeworld. Human ships drifted, their crews dead. Thousands of fighters had been destroyed. An entire battleship had sacrificed itself. And the Kralix ships sat disabled in space, their crews trapped and helpless. What happens to them now? Cirrus asked quietly. Admiral Chen stood looking. 3 days after the battle, Sarah stood in her office watching the news feeds with growing unease. The Valthian people were celebrating, streets filled with crowds cheering the human victory. Banners and displays showed Admiral Chen's face alongside messages of gratitude. Children waved human flags they had made from cloth and imagination. Her people were grateful. They should be. The humans had saved them from extinction. But Saris couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. The human fleet hadn't left. More ships kept arriving through faster-than-light jumps. Supply vessels, troop transports, intelligence ships. Instead of 47 warships, there were now over 70 human vessels in Coalition space, and they were hunting. Counselor Pren entered her office without knocking, his blue skin flushed dark with anger. Have you seen the latest reports? Which ones? Saris asked tiredly. She hadn't slept properly in days. The humans pursued 3 Kralix ships that escaped the battle. They tracked them back to a supply depot in neutral space and destroyed it. Completely. Every ship, every station, every installation. Saris felt cold. That's beyond coalition borders. Beyond our jurisdiction. Exactly. They didn't ask permission. They didn't inform us. They just went and destroyed it. Pren pulled up images on his tablet. The supply depot had been a major installation. Now it was debris and frozen corpses floating in space. There's more, Pren continued. Human intelligence vessels have been scanning Kralix communications. They've identified the locations of military bases, supply lines, and command centers deep inside Kralix territory, and Admiral Chen is planning to strike them. That's not defense, Saris said quietly. That's invasion. That's revenge, Pren corrected bitterly. The humans aren't satisfied with just defeating the fleet that attacked us. They want to cripple the entire Kralix Empire. Saris contacted the vengeful spirit immediately. She needed to talk to Admiral Chen, to understand what was happening, to stop this before it went too far. Chen received her in the same observation room where they had talked before the battle. He looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes, but his expression remained as hard as ever. Ambassador Saris, what can I do for you? You can explain why human forces are attacking targets outside Coalition space without authorization, Saris said, her voice sharp. You can explain why you're invading Kralix territory when we only asked you to defend our worlds. Chen poured himself a drink. The same amber liquid from before. He didn't offer her any this time. We're neutralizing future threats. You're escalating a conflict that we wanted to end, Saris countered. The Kralix fleet is destroyed. Our worlds are safe. Why continue fighting? Because the threat isn't eliminated, Chen said patiently, as if explaining something obvious to a child. We destroyed one fleet. The Kralix Empire has dozens more. If we stop now, they'll regroup and come back in a year or 5 years or 10 years. And next time, humans might not be around to help. So you're taking it upon yourself to decide the fate of an entire empire, Saris demanded. We didn't ask for this. We didn't authorize this. You asked us to save you, Chen replied. That's what we're doing. But we're not going to do a half job. We're going to make sure the Kralix never threaten you again. That requires destroying their ability to wage war. It requires genocide, Saris said, the word bitter on her tongue. Chen's eyes flashed with anger for the first time. Genocide is what the Kralix were planning for you. We're engaging military targets only. Command centers, shipyards, military bases. We're not bombing civilian populations or enslaving their people. That's what they did to you. The difference is just a matter of degree, Saris insisted. No, Ambassador. The difference is everything. Chen set down his drink. Let me tell you about Earth's history. About the wars we fought. We've committed atrocities. We've done terrible things to each other. We know what true genocide looks like because we've done it. We've also learned from those mistakes. We've established rules of warfare. Protections for civilians. Laws about acceptable targets. He pulled up tactical displays showing the human operations. Every target we've hit has been military. Every strike has been measured to minimize collateral damage. We're dismantling their war machine, not their civilization. You're still making that decision for them, Saris argued. For us, for everyone. Someone has to, Chen said quietly. The Kralix made their choice when they attacked you. They demonstrated what they are, a threat, and threats need to be eliminated before they can harm anyone else. And what makes you the judge of who is a threat? Saris demanded. What gives humans the authority to decide which civilizations live and which die? Chen looked at her for a long moment. The fact that we're willing to do it. The fact that we can do it. And the fact that you called us when you needed someone who could. He walked to the window overlooking space. In the distance, Saris could see Valth Prime turning peacefully. Safe because of human violence. Protected because of human brutality. Let me ask you something, Ambassador, Chen said. What would you have done if we hadn't come? If your distress call had gone unanswered? We would have found another way, Saris said. But her voice lacked conviction. No, you wouldn't have. The Kralix would have conquered your worlds, enslaved your people, and moved on to the next target. Your civilization would have ended. Your culture would have been destroyed. Everything you value would have been lost. At least our principles would have remained intact, Saris said. Chen laughed. It was a harsh sound. Principles don't mean anything if you're dead. The Kralix don't care about your values. They don't respect your pacifism. They see it as weakness to be exploited. He turned back to face her. You want to know the ugly truth, Ambassador? Peace only exists because someone is willing to defend it. Someone has to be willing to do violence so that others can live without violence. That's what humans are. We're the ones who get our hands bloody so yours can stay clean. I never asked for that, Cirrus whispered. Yes, you did. When you sent that distress call. When you asked for help. You asked us to solve your problem. You just didn't want to know how we solve problems. A communication came through on Chen's tablet. He glanced at it and nodded. We've located the Kralix High Command. It's a space station in their home system. We're preparing to strike it. You can't, Sarah said desperately. That's their government. Their leadership. Destroying it would throw their entire empire into chaos. That's the point, Chen said calmly. Chaos means they can't organize another attack. Chaos means they'll be too busy fighting among themselves to threaten anyone else. Chaos gives you time to rebuild and strengthen your defenses so you never need to call for help again. People will die, Sarah said. Innocent people who had nothing to do with the attacks on coalition space. Probably, Chen admitted. War is imperfect. We'll do our best to minimize civilian casualties, but there will be collateral damage. There always is. But those deaths will prevent the deaths of millions of your people in future attacks. How can you live with that? Cirrus asked. How can you make those calculations? Decide whose lives matter more? Chen was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer, sadder. We live with it because someone has to. Because the alternative is worse. Because if we don't make those hard choices, civilizations like yours disappear. He pulled up more displays. After we strike the High Command, we're going to hit their major shipyards. There are 3 of them. They produce the warships used to conquer other species. Without those shipyards, the Kralix ability to wage offensive war drops by about 70%. You've already planned all of this, Sarris realized. Before we even asked. You came here knowing you would do this. We came here knowing we would do whatever was necessary to protect you, Chen corrected. This is necessary. We've seen empires like the Kralix before. If you don't break them completely, they come back stronger. And what if you're wrong? Cirrus challenged. What if this just makes them more desperate? More angry? What if they come back in 20 years with even more fury? Then we'll be here again, Chen said simply. And we'll stop them again. As many times as it takes for them to learn that some species are off limits. Sarris felt tears forming in her eyes. 3 of them. Her species cried with 3 tears, 1 from each eyelid. We just wanted peace. We just wanted to be left alone. I know, Chen said, and for the first time she heard genuine sympathy in his voice. But wanting peace isn't enough. You need the strength to defend it. You need the will to fight for it. Or you need allies who have that strength and will. He gestured to the human fleet visible through the observation window. This is what it costs, Ambassador. This is what survival looks like in a hostile galaxy. It's ugly. It's brutal. It's unfair. But it works. At what price? Cirrus asked. Whatever the price is, it's less than extinction, Chen replied. Over the next week, the human campaign against the Kralix Empire unfolded with ruthless efficiency. They struck the High Command Station, killing most of the Kralix leadership. They destroyed 2 of the 3 major shipyards. They crippled supply lines and disrupted communications networks. The Kralix Empire, which had seemed so powerful and unstoppable, fractured. Regional commanders fought among themselves for control. Border territories declared independence. Client species that had been subjugated by the Kralix saw an opportunity. 4 weeks after the battle, the human fleet prepared to depart. The celebration parades had ended. The memorials for the fallen had been completed. The Kralix Empire was shattered and no longer a threat. It was time for the humans to go home. Sarah stood at the spaceport watching the last shuttle loads of human personnel board their transports. The soldiers and crew members moved with the same efficient precision they had shown during the battle. No wasted motion. No unnecessary conversation. They completed their tasks and departed. They were professionals, Sarah had to admit. Terrifying professionals who had saved her people through methods that still gave her nightmares. The galactic news networks had been covering the Kralix situation extensively. Other civilizations were taking notice. Some praised the humans as heroes and protectors. Others expressed concern about humanity's willingness to use overwhelming force. A few species had quietly begun diplomatic overtures to Earth, seeking defense pacts and military alliances. Humanity's reputation had changed overnight. They were no longer seen as just another spacefaring species trying to find their place in the galaxy. They were now recognized as something dangerous. Something powerful. Something that could break empires if provoked. Counselor Pren joined Saris at the observation deck overlooking the landing pads. The Council wants to offer the humans a formal defense treaty. Military cooperation in exchange for protection. We're buying security with someone else's violence, Saris said quietly. We're accepting reality, Pren corrected. The galaxy isn't the peaceful place we pretended it was. Species like the Kralix exist, and we can't defend ourselves against them. So we hire humans to do our fighting for us, Saris said bitterly. Is that so different from what we already did? Pren asked. We called them when we needed help. Now we're just making it official. Saris didn't have a good answer to that. She had made the choice to accept human help. She had given Admiral Chen permission to save her people using his methods. She couldn't pretend now that she bore no responsibility for what followed. A message came through on her communicator. Admiral Chen wanted to meet with her one last time before the fleet departed. Saris took a shuttle up to the Vengeful Spirit, making the journey she had made several times over the past weeks. The ship felt different now, less intimidating. She understood it better, understood what it represented. Chen received her in his office rather than the observation room. The space was smaller, more personal. Pictures of Earth decorated one wall. His family, Saris realized. A woman and 2 children smiling at the camera. Another image showed a younger Chen in military uniform standing with a group of soldiers, all of them grinning despite visible combat damage to their surroundings. My wife and kids, Chen said, noticing her looking at the pictures. And my unit from the Mars Rebellion 20 years ago. Half of them are dead now. I'm sorry, Saris said automatically. Don't be. They died doing what they believed in, protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. He gestured to a chair. Sit, please. I wanted to talk before we left. Saris sat down, suddenly feeling very tired. I suppose you want me to thank you again? Actually, I wanted to apologize. That surprised her. For what? Chen leaned back in his chair. For not being what you expected. For not solving your problem the way you wanted it solved. For forcing you to confront some ugly truths about the galaxy. You saved my people, Saris said. That's what matters, is it? Chen asked. You don't look like someone whose people were saved. You look like someone whose worldview was shattered. Saris felt those 3 tears forming again. We built our entire civilization on the principle that violence is never the answer. That peace can always be achieved through dialogue and understanding. And then you came and proved that sometimes violence is the only answer. Not the only answer, Chen said gently. The last answer. Violence should always be the last resort after everything else has failed. But when it is the last resort, you can't hesitate. You can't use half measures. You have to be willing to do what's necessary. How do you know when everything else has failed? Saris asked. When do you decide it's time to stop talking and start killing? Chen was quiet for a moment. That's the hardest question any civilization faces. For us, the answer came from bitter experience. We tried appeasement. We tried ignoring threats. We tried believing that everyone wanted peace as much as we did. And we learned through blood and fire that some beings only respect force. He pulled up a file on his tablet. This is a report from our xenopsychology team. They studied the Kralix extensively during our campaign. Do you know what they found? Saris shook her head. The Kralix literally cannot comprehend pacifism. Their brain structure, their cultural evolution, their entire society is built around dominance hierarchies, maintained through violence. When you sent ambassadors offering peace, they interpreted it as submission. When you established ceasefires, they saw weakness. Every diplomatic gesture you made reinforced their belief that you were prey. So we were doomed from the start. Saris said, quietly. No. You were doomed if you insisted on using only diplomacy against an enemy that couldn't understand it. But you weren't doomed if you were willing to fight, or willing to call someone who could fight for you. Chen closed the file. Ambassador, I want you to understand something. We didn't enjoy this. Destroying that fleet, crippling their empire, all of it. We're not bloodthirsty monsters who love war. Most of us hate it. But we're good at it because we've had to be. That's what frightens me, Saris admitted. You're so good at violence. So efficient at killing. What happens when you decide someone else is a threat? Then we have the same conversation we had with the Kralix, Chen said. We try talking first. We offer diplomatic solutions. We give every opportunity for peaceful resolution, and only if all of that fails do we resort to force. And who decides when it's failed? Cirrus pressed. You? Your government? What if you're wrong? Chen's expression grew somber. We might be. We're not perfect. We make mistakes. But I can tell you this. Every human who serves in the military, every person who makes these decisions, they carry the weight of those choices. We don't take it lightly. We don't forget the people who die because of our actions. He gestured to the pictures on his wall. Those soldiers I served with. We still meet once a year. Those of us who survived. We talk about the people we lost. The decisions we made. Whether there was a better way. It never gets easier. We just learn to live with it. How? Cirrus asked. How do you live with the weight of all those deaths? By remembering why we fought, Chen said simply. By knowing that the alternative would have been worse. By believing that protecting innocent lives justifies the methods we used. He stood and walked to the window. Valth Prime turned below, peaceful and whole. Your planet is still there, Ambassador. Your people are alive. Your children have a future. That's because we were willing to do what you couldn't. And yes, we used violence. Yes, we killed. But the alternative was letting the Kraliks exterminate your entire civilization. Can you honestly tell me that would have been better? Cirrus joined him at the window. No, I can't, and that's what keeps me awake at night. The fact that you were right. That violence was necessary. That all our principles and values meant nothing against someone who wanted to destroy us. Your principles still matter, Chen said. They're why we came. They're why we fought. A universe where civilizations like yours can exist and thrive. That's worth protecting. We don't want every species to become like us. We don't want everyone to embrace violence and warfare. We want species like yours to maintain your values, your pacifism, your dedication to peace. We just want you to understand that someone needs to guard those values from those who would destroy them. Is that how you see yourselves? Cirrus asked. As guardians? More like guard dogs, Chen said with a slight smile. We're not pretty. We're not nice. We're dangerous and we make people uncomfortable. But when the wolves come, you're glad to have us around. A communication alert sounded. The fleet was ready to depart. Chen straightened his uniform and picked up his tablet. I have something for you before I go, he said, handing her a data chip. This contains detailed information on defensive strategies, military organization, and training protocols. If you decide you want to build your own defense force, this will help. If you decide to stay pacifist and rely on allies, that's fine too. But you should make that choice knowing all your options. Cirrus took the chip, feeling its weight in her hand. Are you trying to turn us into warriors? I'm trying to give you choices, Chen replied. Knowledge is never wasted. What you do with it is up to you. They walked together to the shuttle bay. The last of the human personnel had boarded. Only Chen remained. What happens now? Cirrus asked. Do you just go home and wait for the next crisis? More or less, Chen said. We'll keep monitoring the region. If the Kraliks try to rebuild their military and threaten you again, we'll be back. If another aggressive species shows up, call us. We'll come. Just like that? Cirrus asked. You'll drop everything.